I have 5:30, so welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us at this December 6th regular school board meeting. If you have an agenda or if you're watching online, item number 1 deals with all of our strategies. Item number 2 deals with the face coverings policy here in the Faribault Public Schools. Item number 3 is the meeting where it can be viewed online on our YouTube site. And item number 4 is the truth and taxation hearing. So tonight's kind of a unique meeting, and anything we're doing at 6 o'clock, we will stop and we will move into the truth and taxation hearing. We have to do that by statute, so we will not start anything at 5:58, if you will. We might have a brief moment and just wait until we get into that, but we do have to start that at 6 o'clock. And then with that is item number 5, where we'll call the meeting to order. Ms. Treadway, will you please determine if we have a quorum?
We do, Mr. Chair.
Wonderful, thank you. I'd ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for leading us in that, Mr. Bellingham. All right, this brings us to item number 6, which is the approval of the agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Ms. Treadway, a second by Mr. Bellingham. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you for that. I will just read this briefly. Item number 7, which is the school board public comment guidelines. This is an opportunity for residents, business and property owners, parents, students, and employees of the Faribault Public School District to address the board. You must sign up in person at the board meeting and address the board from the podium, which is right here. Members of the public will address their remarks with civility and respect. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. Please state your reason for addressing the board. This is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear your comments. Public comment is not available at work sessions or closed sessions of the school board. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comment about specific student or staff matters, even without naming them in open session. This includes the public comment portion of our meeting. The board respects and values input, but when it relates to a specific student, staff, or to a specific matter, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. Anyone interested in making a public comment will be asked to complete an information card before the meeting starts, providing their name, address, and topic of their comment. All comments must conform to School Board Policy 206, which is available for review on the district website at www.faribault.k12.mn.us. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to make comments on one specific topic. Each topic will have a total of 15 minutes allowed for comments. With that, I will open the meeting to our community comment session. Ms. Averill, did we have anybody register for community comments? No. So I'll just ask briefly one time if there's any community members, anybody that wants to come forward and make a community comment? Okay, hearing none, we will move on. This brings us to item 8. Consider approval of employment contract with Richard Salter. Mr. Salter, will you come forward, please? Wonderful. If you didn't mind, just introduce yourself and welcome to the meeting tonight.
Hello, my name is Richard Salter. More?
Wonderful.
Come on back, you're done.
No, perfect. Yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself if you want.
Okay.
We'll go from there.
Originally from South Florida. I attended the University of Minnesota Moores, where I received my bachelor's degree in elementary education. I have my master's degree in educational leadership, and I'm currently working on my doctorate in organizational leadership. Retired police officer after 21 years. I'm also a retired Army paralegal. I'm a father of 4, and I coach youth wrestling and high school wrestling as well in Rosemont.
Yes. Wrestling. Did you hear that? Wrestling. All right.
Wonderful, thank you. Welcome. Board members, any questions, comments for Mr. Salter? I will just say thank you for coming, and also thank you for your years of service on the police force.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it. With that said, I will entertain a motion to approve the employment contract with Mr. Richard Salter.
So moved.
Second. Give it to
Cassie?
Cassie? Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Steves. Any further discussion?
Glad to have this position, glad to have you joining the team, and we'll look forward to hearing about your work.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
You're not interested in the chief of police, are you?
There's
Not
an
that I'm
opening.
recruiting, you stay here.
Any other comments or questions? All right, we have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Steves. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Welcome, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, this brings us to item 9, recognitions, awards, and presentations. 9A, the cross-country team.
Coach Clapp.
Welcome.
Come on up, girls. Well, thank you to the board. Obviously, we are here because we had, kind of an incredible season with 5 of the runners here that ran at the state meet that you are recognizing tonight. They swung for a big goal and hit it at the end there. So we had a new section this year, and we were able to host the section meet. Top 2 teams go on from there. Thank you to the administration and the board members that were there supporting us on. And we were second place by 2 points. So it's like, an inch or so in a football game. So, and that led us to qualify for the AA state meet, which we ran in the first week of November and finished 14th as a team. So it was the first time since '96 that we were there as a team. And top finish since like '91. So it was a very cool year for us.
Wonderful. Coach Clapp, would you mind introducing the team?
Yep. So we have Felicity Foxelven, senior. We were a very young and a very old team, so we don't have that middle piece. So Britton Beardsley is an 8th grader, Aubrey Newport is an 8th grader, Cecilia Hoisington is an 8th grader, and Ella Beardsley is a senior.
Wonderful. Do any of the runners want to say anything? Looks like a talkative bunch.
Maybe the captain should say something.
Well, it was a great way to end senior year, and I don't know, it was just super fun to have the experience, no matter how we placed or how we did in state. It was just a great experience and something that I'll remember forever.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Awesome. Anyone else want to talk? No?
They're usually not this quiet.
Classroom management, I guess, Coach Clapp, I don't know. Wonderful. Board members?
Congratulations. Do you want to challenge any board members to a race? Not me.
Any other board members?
No, that's awesome. We know it's been a hard couple of years, and so it's nice to, like you said, have your senior year end like this, and hopefully it's a beginning of some good times. So congratulations.
Great.
Coach Clapp, as you mentioned, you have a couple seniors and you have a couple young ones, right? 8th grade, so that means that not everybody graduated, and so hopefully you have several good years ahead of all the younger ones and seniors. Great job, so.
We're going to swing for it again next year.
Yep. Good.
Yes.
All right, great job. You're welcome to stay all night if you want to see how these fun school board meetings work. Almost as fun as watching you run. Item number 9B, ALC update. Ms. Cora Packard Emery, come on up, please.
Hello, good evening. I also have Mallory with me as well. We're both going to present to you. We have a PowerPoint we'd like to share. Possibly.
Drew, are you able to get that on these screens as well?
I'll do my best.
Okay, thank you. Cora, if you don't mind, just give them a second.
All right, so we'd like to kind of just start off with a little bit about what an ALC is, just as a review. You got the right button here?
Or just give me 1 second, we're gonna see if we can get it on this.
Oh,
screen,
okay.
too. Drew, do you think we can get it on that screen? Or?
Yeah.
There you go, that's the slide, right there. That's it.
That's it, okay.
And Drew, for this one? Oh, you're getting to it, okay, thank you. Wonderful, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, so with the ALC, an Alternative Learning Center, basically we have to fit a niche. Our niche is providing a safe space for students that have not traditionally been doing well in a regular school setting. So a lot of our students, if you talk to them or ask them about what we do, we try to create a space that we call our tribe, or kind of like more of a family. So students have a lot more connections with teachers. We have that smaller class size setting, and these are things that the state is asking us to provide that fit this criteria. So some of that is that personalized learning. We have a continuing learning plan, which each student has to fill out each year. We talk about having common goals, talking about what they want to finish or complete by the end of the school year, and we check in on that at least once a year. This year, I'll talk a little later about an advisory we're working on, but we're looking at that at least quarterly, if not more often. Smaller class sizes, the year-round programming, summer school, evening classes, etc. Also the credit recovery, which most of that's happening at the high school level, at the Faribault Public High School and not necessarily at the ALC. And then independent study options. So, definition of alternative program. So we are to provide and address those students that cannot be, can't meet their needs in a regular school. So for whatever reasons that might be, it could be as listed there that they're getting poor grades, truancy, disruptive behavior, pregnancy. We have seen a rise, and Mallory talked about that as well, the mental health. Which we're trying to figure out our best plan. However, you know, that's kind of our mix. That's the students that we have, and that's who we serve. And money comes from our state level, right? We get funding based on the kids that show up, just like a regular public school or the traditional school, we'll call it traditional. And we are trying to help those students that are basically a lot of times at that poverty level, that we're trying to give them an advance to kind of catch up or be on par with other students. So a lot of miss school. A lot of students are coming to us right now that haven't been in school for a month or longer. So we're trying to pick up those kids and get them back into our system here in the district. These are, and I won't go through all of them, but you can see that this is the criteria which students have to have at least one of these factors to be able to qualify to be at our school. A lot of them come to us with being behind, they're not going to graduate on time, right? So that's typically what we get. But most of our students can check off at least two, if not more, of the criteria that we see here. So we have a few that fit all these right now. We have some families, students that are expecting. We have a few that already have children, chemically dependent, expelled. I mean, we've got the whole list there. And I know that this has been a hot topic, and we want to share that our enrollment has been doing very well. It continues. I think we have at least one, if not more, every week we're having calls and asking if the ALC is a good fit for them. We typically have a meeting, sit down and ask the student, you know, here's what we have. Does this feel like it's going to work for you? We don't always fit everyone's needs, and so we have helped other students find different places to be enrolled in. Be that back at the high school, be that at adult ed. So we go through basically what's expected of them and find out if that's going to work for them. So currently, overall, we're serving 105 students. That includes all our services that we're doing on campus as well as at the high school. On campus, we have 88, and you can kind of see our spread. Very heavy with our 12th graders right now. So I had quite a few that didn't quite make it last year with COVID, or, you know, just the online learning didn't work for them. We're looking at having, what's the number? I'm trying to think off the top of my head. We're on target for most of our 12th graders, put it that way. We do know we'll have some 12th grade that will need to come back next year and finish up. They have till they're 21 to complete courses at the ALC. And if that doesn't work for us there, we can take a lot of what we're doing and work with Cassie over at adult education. And so I'll speak of that in a little bit too. And you can see our work-based, that also brings in extra funding for us. We have a half-time work-based learning teacher at this time, and she's serving 26 last quarter and 24 currently, which we have a lot more students that have jobs that we could get into that program too. Independent study, our numbers are a little lower right now. We have 8, and that includes some from Medford and then those from Faribault. And then below that, we have the credit recovery, which we are trying a standard-based process that allows students to get done quicker and not make them take the whole course over, but to show us what they know based on what criteria they might be missing, so we can make programming for them to complete that coursework and get that credit. So far, we're getting really good feedback from those students that are in that. We have 10, and I think we just added another one today, that are registered to go to South Central and do the PSEO. So they will have to drop one of the classes with us, but they can still be a full-time student with us and take a course or more at South Central. We're serving 21 special ed, 13 EL, and we've had 11 adult education referrals. And what I'm really excited to talk about is the GED, Adult Diploma ALC collaboration that Cassie and I are working on right now. Currently we have 4. Originally, that started out with a couple students that have military dates to be shipped out on, and they had so many credits, we were trying to figure out how to meet them, and talked about if adult ed would be the right direction for them. However, this is their senior year, and they wanted to still participate and be at our school and be around their friends, and also to walk. So we're working with a GED kind of test out option, but then they're still going to go to our school and be that student and participate, and then at the end of the school year, they'll take that GED test to test out. Last year, we had re-enrollment of 55. Okay, so we've added quite a few, 24 from the high school at this point, 5 from Discovery, actually we'll be at 6. Northfield 1, we've had 6 out of state, out of state district out of Minnesota, there we go, and 3 out of state. So we're kind of getting a lot from all different directions right now. All right, so this is the fun stuff for us. This is part of what we're also charted ourselves with for our goals, but trying to create a positive school experience for those that have not had that positive experience. So we had our first ever alumni event where we had students of the past and students of the current come and enjoy an evening of fun. Had an outdoor activity because it was early in the fall, and a beautiful night, and a lot of people came out, so it was nice to see that. I believe our number was 85 in attendance. And we had really good feedback and requests that we do it again, and possibly one in the spring. And this is where I will let someone else talk for a while.
All right, so I'm Mallory Fuchs. I'm the chemical health specialist out at the ALC. So we have started doing monthly sober events, kind of a new thing to show our kids, but also the community that you can have sober fun. So in October, we did a pumpkin carving where we had Halloween movies playing, hot chocolate. We had about 45 people attend that with their kids, so that was pretty neat. We're also planning to do one once a month, and then also in the spring, we have a concert that we're going to have. An individual from Mankato who is in recovery himself that's going to come play some music open to the kids in the community. Again, we got a grant through Communities Talk to be able to put these on. We've also done all-school events, bringing in different speakers for our students. So we had Nami come in. She came in and talked about ending the silence about mental health, which was really great. We had a lot of students really open up after that presentation about mental health struggles and having those open and honest conversations. We also have a veteran came in and spoke to our students on Veterans Day. And then this past Friday, we had Erica from the Hope Center come in and talk to our students about what do healthy relationships look like, which was also, our students were really engaged and appreciative of those real life and honest conversations. If you have anything to add to those.
Well, and we'll have more speakers. Part of what we'll talk to you guys about what we're doing on our Fridays has been trying to get different people in from the community. And then some of the activities that we have been providing for our students, the participation in homecoming on that Veterans Day. We also had them make thank you cards for local vets in the area. We did a Thanksgiving meal. Our students are participating in helping with Toys for Tots, delivery of them on that this next December.
December 14th and 15th, they'll be passing them out. Yep, the gifts.
An all-school kickball tournament that went really, really well. That was very enjoyable, and staff got to participate as well. And we've been doing an early bird drawing to help us improve our morning attendance, and also just we give them little tickets if they're on time, and then on Fridays we do drawings, but they have to be there to win, and that's been highly sought after. So they are very proud of their early bird winnings. Another part of our improvement plan that we're working on is working towards student accessibility and building their accountability, okay, giving them that ownership, so meeting their student needs. So part of that is included in our ALC Fridays. What we are doing on Fridays is shortening our class periods. So instead of 50 minutes, we do 30-minute classes. That allows us time to get those guest speakers in there if we need to have a town hall and address issues that we're seeing in the school. One of the topics that we spoke highly of based on our students was making a safe space for students. Feeling safe coming back after COVID, feeling safe after coming out of traumatic, whatever their situation might have been, but making sure that students really felt like they belonged to that space and that place. And then the speakers we spoke of, and then advisory check-in. So each student is in a smaller group setting where they have a teacher that is helping them to make sure they're on track with graduation, on track with credits. We also have our students have to have so many hours to get that credit to help us with our attendance. And so they're making sure that we're making them accountable for all the things that they need to get done. Along with that, because of the shortened class day, we are basically have that afternoon that we can give kids choice. We have students that are out in our community helping at Jefferson. Jefferson.
Yep.
Jefferson, I always get them mixed up. Doing some elementary tutoring. We talked about going to a couple of the other schools as well. There's a chance for them to take on independent work or tutoring time to get their own work done. We always have an outdoor option. Yoga reset. We did a fantastic murder mystery or forensic science, and some beading and some other interest areas. And a lot of those we get generated from students' requests as well. And then on to networking and building community. And we spoke of it a little bit, but just to kind of give you the list here. And I'm gonna go ahead and let Mallory speak of these because she's been doing the work on these.
Yep, we've had health finders come in with different resources. They also come in and do a monthly free clinic with our students. Typically, it's the first Monday of the month that they will come in, get whether it's dentist appointments set up, mental health referrals set up. Cora and I have done too, where if students need those mental health resources, to set them up virtually for them while they're in our building and give them a private space to do that. One of the barriers for our students is transportation. So any way that we can make that work, we want to do that for them. Again, NAMI came in, the Hope Center. Lindsay Reese from Public Health has came in to also talk about mental health with us. South Central College comes in on Fridays. Ron, he comes in and helps our students get signed up, walk through the process, what are the options out there for them. The credit unions came in, Youth Build Construction course. Cora can talk a little bit more about that one. We've also had the Virtues Project come in, Kim Anderson, with staff training recently, and we're gonna start using those virtues with our students. So picking out a virtue of the week, and we're gonna talk about that in our advisory and build those with our students and staff. We've also connected with Rice County Family Planning for her to come in and give education. And then we do have quite a few students who are expecting parents or already parents. And once a month, we have HCI, Healthy Community Initiative, come in and have a group with those students to connect them with further resources, and also just a support group for them, for each other.
Mallory and Cora, I've got about 4 minutes before we've got to go to the truth and taxation, just to give you a heads up. Thank you.
All right, so we will jump down here, but some of the things we are still working on, this is things in process that we're doing. Trying to put that truancy process back in place, reestablishing that since post-COVID. Mallory's working on some groups with meeting with students, and you can kind of see our list there of what we're have served or provided resources to currently. We have 3 homeless resources provided, 21 mental health service referrals, and 12 chemical health service referrals. Is there anything you see on that one? Good, okay. All right, so let's see, we have a lot on our list. This inactive, we're trying to get it to go. We piloted, like I said, the standard-based credit recovery. Student advisory committees, trying to give our students more voice in our programming and what they need us to provide for them. We're looking at having students do some work with our middle school ALCs, talking so far with Jody a little bit and seeing if that's going to be an option for us to do something coming to their school or they come to our school. That spring alumni event and other community activities that we want to see provided on our campus. All right, so Mallory's the genius on this one, so I want you to share, since you've done some really great work.
So we reached out to a few of our alumni to show our students what alumni have done after graduation and some of the success stories. And so we had a couple of our students say where they are now, what their profession is, and I truly believe we can't be what we don't see. And so if we can put that in front of our students of what the possibilities are and who they can be and who they are, how important that is. So we ask alumni to give us their story, what the ALC meant to them, and then we post these up throughout the school so our students can see the alumni that have came through.
If we have any time for questions or comments.
We've got about 2 minutes, and then we might call you back up if we have additional, so I apologize, you're going to have to stick around a few minutes, so thank you. Board members, we've got about 2 minutes for questions and comments. I'll open it up.
First of all, Candace Duncan was a former first grade student of mine, so it's so wonderful. And I know, I stay in contact with her, so I know what a valued resource ALC has been for her. Thank you so much. I am curious, with all the new initiatives that you have, how have the staff that have continued feeling about what's happening at the school?
So just like with our students, it's very much that tribe, and we're talking at our meeting. We do meet daily. We meet every day to go through attendance and then finding out if there's student issues that I need to be aware of, things that they're noticing. And that is one of the questions we take on as well. However, Mallory has been able to kind of be the center of that and be able to provide a lot of these other things outside without teacher support. A lot of times teachers are just working on that Friday piece, but it really is just the advisory, which again, Mallory has taken upon herself to kind of provide, like, here's an outline, here's what you could be talking about, or just to do the checking with the students. So a lot of that is taken off the teachers.
Well, the new programs look very exciting. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you for that. We're going to have to move into the truth and taxation. We'll call you back up if we need to. Thank you. Wonderful presentation.
You know, just fill in a comment. I mean, Mallory and Cor, since they've been down there, have been fantastic. So thank you for everything that you guys are doing down there.
So, Mr. Gertis, will you please come up? This brings us to the truth and taxation hearing that is starting now at 6 o'clock. I'll just briefly read a statement. During the truth and taxation hearing, the public must be given a reasonable amount of time to comment and ask questions regarding the proposed property tax levy and budget. If anyone would like to comment or ask questions regarding the proposed property tax levy and budget, please email Kathy Zavro at her email address as stated on the agenda by 3 o'clock today, December 6th, 2021. Please include your name, address, and phone number. Ms. Zavro, did we get any emails from the community asking to speak tonight? No. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So, Mr. Gertis, please take us through your slide presentation, if you would.
Well, this isn't going to be near as exciting as state cross-country meets or ALC presentations, but I'll do the best I can here with what we have today. So tonight, we're going to do a quick presentation on the levy 21, pay 22 property tax certification for this year. A couple of things that we are going to discuss. We'll briefly review the 21-22 budget. We'll briefly talk about the 20-21 actual revenue and expenditures. We'll discuss the 21 pay, 22 property tax levy, and then as Mr. Wolf alluded to, we will leave time for public comment at the end. So to just talk a little bit about, again, the budget, we've had this conversation before, so I will be brief. But this slide does represent the sources of revenue for the general fund only. It's the blue there you'll see is our 13% in local taxes. The orange is a very small piece in other revenue. That would be sporting events, tickets, things of that nature. The large percentage, 68% in state sources. And the yellow at the bottom is the federal revenue. And again, that's a little larger than normal based on all the ESSER funds that we have in the budget this year. So this is a slide that we've used in the past. This kind of shows the relationship between the levy, the state aid and inflation. So in 2003, the state had deemed to fully fund the educational formula. Since then, there has been a disparity between inflation and the funding. As it stands today, it's a $598 per pupil. So if you think about that, based on about 3,300 pupil units, ADMs that we have here, you're looking at just south of $2 million in funding that we don't have based on inflation. This slide represents a little bit on the expenditures, again, by group. So again, 78% salary and benefits. You know, we're a service organization, mostly in salary and benefits. 13% purchase services, and really small pieces of the pie when it comes to supplies, capital expenditures, and debt service. Briefly review the fund balance policy. The policy as it stands today is 9.5% of general fund expenditures, less student activities and LTFM. And you can kind of see where the fund balance has been. Budget of fiscal year 21 was just south of 12%. Our actual was 12.57%, and roughly that carried forward into our budget of just south of 12% for fiscal year 22. So this slide is kind of hard to read in that format. I apologize for that. So let's try the next one. That one isn't really much better.
I've got it here if you want to read it.
Well, I wasn't necessarily going to read it, but if everybody wants to pull the slides up in their board book, this really shows the unrestricted and restricted funds for general fund. And then on the second page, kind of if you want to look at that at your convenience, it talks about food service, community ed, debt service, our construction fund, and health insurance and OPEB at the bottom that's being written over the top of.
Mr. Gertis, just so you know, in our board book, it appears to be fine. So I don't know what the...
And it was fine earlier, yeah.
There it is, but I'm looking at it online.
We're very good. Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So anyway, this slide looks a little bit better. So we'll move into actuals for fiscal year 21. And I know we've had presentations from Andrew and from the auditors, so I'm not going to deal a lot with actual revenue and expenditures, but you can kind of see our restricted revenue. It's kind of hard to see the totals based on that scrolling that's kind of there in front of us. But the fund balance at the end, or at the beginning of fiscal year 21 was $13 million. And you can see the fund balance at the end of June 30th, end of fiscal year 21, at $17,681,000 plus. Again, big difference there, if you look, is the construction fund. So we again had a pretty large fund balance in the building construction fund due to the COPs that were issued in 21. And as you are well aware, most of these get spent down in calendar year, or fiscal year '22. Okay, so that's the big difference there, along with some other minor increases in different funds. So moving on to the levy. So again, 22 levy. We look at three parts of the levy. There's the general fund, which is the large portion of the property tax levy. There's a smaller chunk of community service fund and the debt service fund. So the first part of the general fund has to deal with the referendum market value portion of the general fund. And this, again, in Rice County went up by 6.18%. So as we're looking through this, the referendum market value, for those of you that are newer to this, only includes residential value. It does not include farmland or seasonal or recreational type taxes. So as we look at this, that again is not quite lined up here as well, but the local optional revenue is about $2 million. The operating levies that we have generate about 2.7. And then you can see equity and transition, and it's all kind of out of whack there, but the total of 5.2 million. On top of that 5.2 million, there's an adjustment there of $266,000 that we'll talk about in a little bit. But that's an adjustment that the state does every year. It goes back and looks at the 2 years prior and goes out and adjusts for current numbers based on what has actually happened. So as we move into this slide, again, it's a little hard to read. We're looking at the net tax capacity. So our net tax capacity, based on the total value of all the land and all the assets in the county, went up by 5.6%. And you can see some of the things that are included in that: operating capital, our A&I budget, unemployment, safe schools, CTE, that was mentioned earlier, and our LTFM portion of the levy. So a total there of about 2.6, with a small adjustment of $23,000 for a net of 2.6 at the end. So, moving on, maybe, there we go. So I just wanted to explain a little bit on the referendum market value. I mentioned earlier that there were some large adjustments in the referendum market value, both in the current year and the prior 2 years. So if we look at the total district market value, which is in the blue line, you can see that that is growing quite significantly over the last 5 years. And if you look at the light teal line or green line, you can see that's resident pupil units that are going down. So the proportion of this is really saying that we have more value in the county. We have less pupil units to spread that value over. That means that Rice County should pick up, or the taxpayers pick up, a bigger share of that formula. And so this is just a state formula. It's not anything that you guys did. It's just kind of the funding formula. So 81% of these buckets are factored with levy dollars and 19% roughly with state aid. This is another chart that kind of shows the same thing a little bit differently. Again, the blue is the combined local levy, the light green is state aid, and then the line across the top is the pupil units that are, you can see, kind of trending downward over time. So this chart is also going to be hard to see, but again, this is our levy broken down based on referendum market value and either voter approved or non-voter approved. So looking at the top, we have our operating referendum, and you can see from 21 to 22 that went up $173,000. Those adjustments I mentioned earlier in that category went up $241,000 for a net referendum market value voter approved increase of $415,000. If we look at the second small section there, we have referendum market value non-voter approved. So that's our local optional levy that we levy for. Our equity and transition, which are a small part of the formula. And again, adjustments on all of that to the tune of $212,000. So what we see there is that that shift from state to local has raised the levy portion roughly $415,000 in the dark blue, $301,000 in the light blue. The third section there, again, which is kind of hard to read with the scrolling, is our net tax capacity. That would have been the slide that I mentioned earlier with our operating capital. Move over here, you can see the debt service, A&I, and so on. Very small increases there to the tune of $27,000. So our net tax capacity, while it went up, it did not increase the levy. So if you look at the bottom there again, you can kind of see the totals by area that we just talked about, and again with the total tax levy in the orange, which is kind of hard to see, of the $711,000 or 7.13%. This slide represents our tax levy both from a residential standpoint and an agricultural standpoint. And you can kind of see that it's been, the residential has been trending actually pretty flat year over year. And the green in the agricultural has actually trended downward. And for those of you that are new to this, between the 17 and 18 tax year is when the state passed the ag tax credit, which was that sharp first drop there that you see early on in that graph. And then from there, that percentage increases over time. And so it kind of will continue to trend down, barring any changes to the state law by our legislatures. Currently, for fiscal year 22 that we're in, it's at 55%. Fiscal year 23 goes to 60%, and then it caps out at 70% thereafter, again, barring any legislative changes. This is another graph kind of showing our residential property kind of chopped up a little bit differently. This looks at a home value, the average home value of about $220,000 taken from the, Department of Revenue website. The bottom section, again, hard to read, roughly $230 of the total 714 in voter approved operating referendum. Again, the second section is the non-voter approved, and so on and so forth, right up the line there. The total there of $747. So moving in just to talk briefly about the Community Service Fund. Again, 5 areas there. Again, kind of hard to read, but the main general ed community about 228. ECFE at just south of 90,000, and then the smaller ones there out. Again, pretty flat year over year. Small adjustment, and a total of $372,000. We move into the last part here in the debt service. Again, we levy for 105% of our debt service, so that is reflected in the $2.1 million. We have the LTFM portion of debt service, and then every year if we don't use that extra 5%, they seem to adjust that away, and that's what that $149,000 represents there on the bottom, for a total in debt service of just over $2.2 million. This slide and the subsequent slide with the numbers kind of gives a visual representation of kind of the big 9, and there's a couple other towns surrounding us here built into this. You can kind of see this again is for last year, or this current year actually, pay 21, so it would have been levy 20, pay 21. And it kind of just shows, again, same graphic representation of the one I showed earlier of our big 9 peers in southeast Minnesota here. Give you a second look at that. And then again, here's the numerical equivalent. standardized based on a home value of $220,000 for consistency across towns. Again, this is pay 21, not pay 22. That's why there's a small difference in our number. Okay. So in summary, here is just a final comparison, again, broken down by fund, general fund, community ed, and debt service. The 2020 paid 2021, which would have been last year's numbers, totaling just south of $10 million. The 21 paid 22 that we're coming to ask for approval for tonight is the $10,689,911 and change. The difference being the $711,000 as mentioned earlier, or a total percentage of 7.13. And at this point in time, I will take any questions if I can answer them for you, and move on from there.
Board members, the floor is yours. Questions, comments for Mr. Gerdes? Superintendent Sesker, if you have anything you'd like to add?
Nope, you guys have the copy, so if you want to go back there, and we'll make sure that they're redefined once we get after this meeting, so that when people want to come look at them, they can take a good look at them too. So, thanks. No, thank you, Mr. Gerdes, it was good.
Okay.
It's a good report.
I just want to ask one thing, Mr. Gerdes. Can you pull the presentation back up?
I got it right here. I think I can mirror it, actually.
Right there it is.
Yeah, go up one more slide, would you please? So this one, I know we spoke about it, or I asked about it at finance this morning. I want to better understand this, and I want our public to understand this. This appears, if I'm reading this correctly, that the community of Faribault pays the least amount of levy taxes compared to all these other districts. Am I reading that correctly?
Yes.
And that's when you combine, just so you know, it's a combination of bond issues, which are buildings, and operating levies. They're both combined there.
Okay, thank you. And while we don't have how this translates into per pupil funding, these levies are a big piece of what drives per pupil funding.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. So, when we look at all these other communities and we talk about where our tax rates are and whatnot, it appears, according to this, when we compare ourselves to our peers, that we are the lowest of the other communities in terms of what our taxpayers are paying on a standard pro-rata $220,000 house value. Is that fair enough to say?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, you answered my question. Anybody else? Anything?
Anybody else? All right, thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it. That will conclude our 2021 Truth in Taxation hearing. I will just ask, board members, any other comments or questions for Cora or Mallory on the ALC presentation? If so, we'll bring them back up.
My comments were going to be accolades and kudos. That was awesome to see. So I don't think you need to come up for that.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Mr. Olson?
They mentioned that...
Let's bring them up. Come on back up.
Yeah, might as well come back up.
Thank you.
I have two questions, Mr. Chair. You mentioned that you took an expelled student. Is that from other districts or from our district?
Currently, the ones that we have are from other districts.
Okay, so when we expel somebody, then they have to go someplace else?
Not necessarily. It kind of depends on the situation and if they're a good fit for our program or not. Because sometimes we have students that are already in the program that bringing other students in, it might not be a good fit. So sometimes we'll ask them to come back later if that works for them.
So what's the definition of expelled? Whatever causes them to be, then all of a sudden they're back into our system again? Does that make sense?
I think that,
I'll let,
yeah, I can go ahead and take a stab at this too. So when you expel a student, what happens is that there's usually comes to a point with our attorneys that they'll say you can either go through the school board and have an expulsion hearing, or you can seek an alternative education for that particular student. And as Cora said, if there's a match with any of the programs, whether it's online or ALC or homebound or whatever it might be that we would offer that child, then it's not as easy as letting them do what they want to do. Then we offer that program. The one thing to keep in mind is that regardless if we expel a student or not, the school district is still responsible for their education, no matter what. So if they're sitting at home after we've expelled that student, then it's by law, we're required them to provide an adequate education for that child. So we try to negotiate that with the parent. So it's not quite as easy as, saying A or B. There's a lot of work that goes into making the decision for that. But ultimately, we're always responsible for the education. And kids can get expelled for various reasons, too.
Mr. Olson,
Yeah.
does that answer your question?
Yeah, and the second question, I've nothing to really deal with what you presented, but what's the future of their home, where they're going to be?
Mm-hmm. Well, if they keep on doing what they are doing right now and having they're really going like gangbusters down there, we will have to either find that site or improve the site that's down there or find a suitable site for them for the following year. Yep. So we haven't got that far yet in that process.
Are we thinking about it at the administration level of where their new home may be, or not yet?
Not yet. I think status quo is, if everything goes the way it's supposed to go, then they would be in the same spot next fall. If they grow and they start blowing up where you can't fit any more people in, then we're going to have to look at other options, and we'll need your guys' help for that.
So was there an option of them going to McKinley?
Yep, that could still be on the table.
That's still an option?
Oh, yeah, yep.
All these sort of
Actually, Anne-Marie and I just talked about that last week, so yeah.
So when is that going to be brought before the board in a work session?
Well, I'm hoping somewhere around January, February at the very latest, because then we'll have pretty solid numbers by that time for them, so. Yep, so anticipate around the February timeline for us to start revisiting where those places will be. Good questions, very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, I just have one question. Curiosity, how do you deal with kids from out of state?
Some are easier than others. It has been a little challenging, but figuring out transcripts and understanding how they're calculating, but we've been able to work with the schools or call them and just to clarify what they were getting for credit.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do they find their way to your ALC?
A lot of times it's family.
Oh, okay.
A lot of them are moving up here. For example, we had an A student that they do a test out process, and if you can't test as a senior, then you can't graduate. So he sought out family members and is up here to try to take care of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Other questions or comments? All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Great work.
All right, this brings us to 9C, Faribault High School Agricultural Program Update with Madeline Schultz.
I brought paperwork because I like it.
Awesome.
So I have two farm business management books. They were intrigued on that. That's contest material, and then this is just kind of paperwork that kids do as part of the egg program. So they'll take one of each, and if anyone's interested in the farm business management books, I'll need these back.
Yep. Thank you.
Oops. Took two.
You're good. You can start whenever you're ready.
All right, so my name is Madeline Schultz. I'm originally from Faribault, Minnesota, graduated from the high school in 2014, and I'm in my second year here. I taught previously for 2 years at Atwater Cosmos Grove City, saw that the position opened up in April of 2020, and was excited for the opportunity to come back home, and it's been a great move. So, common language, the egg world especially the FFA world, is full of 1,000 acronyms. So our first acronym is FFA, which is the Leadership Organization for Agriculture Education. It's our DECA equivalent. Then we have SAE, which is Supervised Agriculture Experiences. That's our work-based learning programs that we have. CDE is Career and Development Events. Those are our contests. That's what that green packet is. So there's a list of, I don't even know how many there that kids can compete in. They compete in usually teams of 3 or 4. 3 scores count with the exception of parliamentary procedure and conduct of chapter meetings. That's a team of 6 where they do Parley Pro. And then the LDEs, like the public speaking, employment skills, exempt speaking, and job interview, that's a team of 1. And then we have the leadership development events, which are what I just covered. So program, last year was the first year of our program. We had 97 students enrolled. Plant science, we had 5 students. Agricultural studies, we had 13. And then we had 79 students in the Raising Chickens course. This year we've seen enrollment increase to 176. Exploring agriculture, we have 17 students. Exploring animals, which is a new course, we have 69 students. Both of those courses are open to grades 9 through 12. And then we have a meat science course, which will run next semester, where we have 10 students. That's open to grades juniors and seniors, and they have to take Raising Chickens previously. And then we have plant science with 20 students enrolled, and then Raising Chickens, we have 60 students. So just a couple of things about the class. Exploring agriculture, like I said, is open to 9th graders through 12th graders. And in this class, we cover a lot of different topics. This year, we've had 2 guest speakers. Faribault alumni Tar Tut talked to the class at the beginning of the year, talking about his where he's at right now at Texas A&M on the livestock judging team, and basically how he got there. And then we had the founder of Rebel Greens, Jay Johnson, come and talk to the class about careers in plant science and careers with hydroponics. We have 3 hydroponics going at the school right now, growing lettuce, spinach, and herbs. And then we went on 1 field trip to the region FFA livestock judging contest, where the kids participated judging beef cattle, sheep, goats, and hogs, or they judged dairy cattle. Then we have an Exploring Animals class, and I don't have any pictures really from that class because we're too busy doing things. In that, we focus mostly on dogs and cats, and then the students have a pet career or pet project where they get to pick an animal of their choosing, and they make a presentation on it. That will be their final, so they have deadlines throughout the semester. We've talked about nutrition, condition and obesity in pets, anatomy and health, reproduction, and then we'll be getting into training theory. Then we have our meat science class, which will be new next semester. Last year I applied for a grant with the Minnesota Ag Education Leadership Council, received $10,000 to buy supplies for that facility. I applied for the grant again this past November to hopefully continue to fill out that facility with different materials. We will learn meat cutting techniques, cooking techniques for different meat products, because in my opinion, a well-done steak is not right, and we gotta teach the kids that. We learn the value of value-added products through the product development. If you go and look at a meat counter in a grocery store, the largest section is gonna be that value-added product, and there's lots of career opportunities with that, not only in the meat science, but also in the cooking side too. And then we're gonna talk about marketing techniques with that product that we develop. One thing that I've seen on social media and heard from a couple of post-secondaries is that they are adding meat cutting into 2 schools up in northern Minnesota. I think one is the CLC, which I can't remember what's totally what the acronym is, but up in Sauk Rapids area. So the need is there, and we're one of the first that are bringing this into a high school level. So that's super exciting because they're looking at that and how can we expand that at the post-secondary level. We have a plant science course. We have 2 actually. And then we ran a summer STEAM course. So the first one is the beauty of plants. So in the fall, up until it gets cold, we do landscaping out and around the school. and inside the courtyard, and we redid one of the corners of the courtyard. We ripped out a bunch of bushes, ripped out a bunch of hostas, and that you can see in that one picture there. And then we replanted it with plants that were donated. And then we went and we trimmed back a bunch of the bushes around the school. And then the summer STEAM course this summer, we re-landscaped by the Faribault High School sign, and then down by the activities area, and then back on that science wing. And then next semester we'll have a Plants for Life class, which will be run in our greenhouse that we have, and talk about, and hopefully have a plant sale next spring. Raising chickens, we raised 25 meat birds or broilers, and then we harvested them in November with our materials. And then we have 5 egg layers that haven't started with laying eggs yet. And then I took the kids to the Region 7 poultry contest. After they harvested the birds, the varsity team placed 8th and the JV team placed 1st. Looking ahead at what the goals are for next year, I want to run a 3-week summer course to get a 0.25 egg credit. We're looking at adding an egg econ course that'll be run concurrent with South Central College. One of the egg professors at Mankato approached me about that because they want to get egg at South Central College in Faribault, and want to bring it into the high school instead of bringing it into the college. That way we don't have to fight with that. And then we want to increase field trip and guest speakers in all courses, kind of what I'm doing in exploring agriculture, but get that across the board. FFA, so last year we had a 5-year grant provided that provides membership to all students. So every student in an ag class is enrolled in FFA, and then it's the student's choice to expand their experiences beyond. We were a recipient of the Minnesota FFA Legacy Grant, which was, I think, $1,500. And then we had 5 students over the past 2 years win jackets through the Bright Futures Blue Jackets Foundation, through Minnesota FFA Foundation. So students apply for those jackets, which are valued at about $75, $80, and then they receive a jacket with that. Leadership development, we had 10 freshman students attend the Green Hand Leadership Day in November, and they really enjoyed that. They had state officers from the state come down and help run that along with our region officers. We had 3 members attend National Convention in Indianapolis, where they participated in one of the largest career and college fairs for students. And then they also got to listen to different guest speakers, watch award ceremonies, and listen to retiring addresses from national officers. And then this last November meeting, the students made dog toys for the local animal shelter out of old t-shirts that will be donated. Competition, we had 3 members exhibit at the state fair: Hannah Wetzel, Johanna Gerke, and Carly Flum. 2 students exhibited beef cattle, one with her heifers and the other one with a dairy steer, and then Carly exhibited sheep. We had our livestock judging team qualify for state, and then I hope to have 5 proficiencies and 4 state degrees, and state degrees are the highest award a student can receive for FFA, and typically given to junior or senior members. So with that, they have to have supervised agriculture experience. Last year, which is the white packet I handed out to you guys, is Hannah Wetzel won the proficiency of application for beef entrepreneurship at the state level. So some of that is cut out, but if you look through it, it talks about like what were some challenges she had, what is her project about, what impact does it have, what accomplishment does it have, what skills has she gained, and then they have to identify 10 measurable skills with that, and then they also do a current and non-current inventory statement along with a balance sheet. So I hope to have 5 this upcoming year. My goals for this year's convention is to have 4 state degree recipients. I want 6 proficiency applications. I'm getting some kids to hopefully do that. 3 will be starting fresh. I want 3 teams to qualify for to state with a CDE. One has qualified, and then we've been working on our farm business management team, which they look through a book like this, and they have to answer questions about income statements, balance sheets, and cash flow statements from regional farmers. And then we'll see if we can get one other team there. And then hopefully to apply for like a national chapter award. They have different areas that you can apply for and get recognition this year at state convention. But yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Board members, questions, comments? Mr. Olson?
Yeah, my grandson,
Yes.
in fact, he got an A in the class. That he loves the program. I mean, see a direction. You know, someplace with animals, agriculture, or whatever. So right now, I think he's got a direction. So, but thank you, thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. He's enjoyable.
Mr. Robichaud?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thanks. One of the fastest growing careers is agribusiness. And what you are beginning to do is develop that foundation for those students that would move on. I'm sure that when you were going through your program, you had people knocking on your door saying, come and work for Monsanto and everybody else. So it's a tremendous program. If you want to talk about a cross-discipline program, it's agriculture.
Yes.
Math, science, history, everything is embedded into that program. So thank you.
Yes.
It's a tremendous program, and thanks for coming back to Faribault.
Yeah, thanks for letting me come back.
Other board members?
Well, Mr. Chair, I'd be remiss if I didn't say something, because this is one program that's near and dear to my heart. Former student here. I can't tell you how proud I am of her and her family and the involvement, but this program, which the 7-period day, thank you, public, for doing this, is one of our offshoots of this. This is really pulling in community involvement. We have what Madeline's not telling you is that she also has an ag advisory board, which she has invited, help me out, Monsanto, ag lenders. We have a whole list, KDHL, Jerry Grosskreitz, and those that are
Bakers.
pulling together. And what direction does the community want to see, or and so the expertise that's out there and our ag community and our business community, like Dr. Robichaud was saying, is really involved, and they are so excited about this program. It's just going to continue to grow. So thank you so much, and all the work you do behind the scenes, and I'd like to go into it again, whatever.
I would change my career.
Yes. But just as a side note, board members, the parliamentary procedure, if you like parliamentary procedure, I did this in FFA when I was 15, 16, and it does stick. So that's where you get it. It's a lifelong skills. It's great. So I can't thank you enough. This is just tremendous. And if I'm a person in the Faribault Public Schools, this is one of the programs I want to go into. And I remember I called Mr. Benty and I said, Mr. Benty, you got a great hire. I know it right away because I knew Nels Onstead up at ACGC, and he was sad to see her go or whatever. But yeah, we're really moving here, and thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks for taking all the words out of my mouth, John.
Oh, sorry.
No, we've seen this program grown, wearing my chamber hat, and it's really exciting, and I see all of the potentials, and you're just reaching out to so many different community partners, so it's noticed, and thank you for growing the program.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'm curious if you have any students that have direct plans after their high school career to go into agribusiness.
Yeah, so I actually have the students, my seniors tell me kind of where they're going, and then I have it posted in my room. I need to update that again, but I do have one student that's going down to Iowa State for A Communications, who's in the program, and then another one is wanting to go pre-vet route, hasn't determined where she's going yet, and then I have another one who's plan is National Guard, but is kind of looking at seeing what she wants to do in addition to that in the ag field. So I've talked to 3 seniors for sure, and know that this is a plan for sure for them. And then a couple that want to go into the welding and stuff, and then people don't know is that also is underneath our umbrella and things like that. So,
Well,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, we're definitely filling jobs. And I tell a lot of my students that I have cousins that grew up in Des Moines and Cedar Rapids and only visited the farm when they came and visited us, that also have jobs at John Deere, Pioneer, Farm Bureau, and doing graphic design or communications or business and marketing. So even if you think you might not get a job there, there's jobs there, and it's good that you're here.
What state are those companies? I'm just checking.
A great one.
Any other comments, questions? Mr. Robichaud?
No.
I just have one question, Mr. Chair. I know that a lot of institutions, higher institutions, have closed their ag teacher programs. And I don't know if Morris is the only one left in the state that does it.
No, so they've been kind of coming back.
Oh,
I
they
think
have?
there's,
That's
yeah,
good.
there's been such a push for CTE to come back into to schools. There's, I can't remember how, I think there's been 15 new programs added this past year in
Oh, there has.
Minnesota for high school. But Southwest Minnesota State had their first class of student teachers 2 years ago. University of Minnesota Crookston's open again, and then University of Minnesota St. Paul. And then River Falls has a program, NDSU has a program, and SDSU and Iowa State.
It's good to hear that they're coming back, because I know that there was a movement to close those programs.
Yeah,
over
there
the
was a
past years.
huge closure in like the 90s and stuff, and then, yeah, in the past couple of years, we've definitely seen an increase across the state.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Ms. Cavalier?
Just quickly, Madeline and Cora and Mallory, I just really wanted to thank you. It feels really nice to have presentations like this on the agenda. I hope we can continue, Mr. Chair and Mr. Tesker, because it's really nice to be able to listen and think and hear about all the great work that's happening in our district. Like I said before, it's been a hard couple of years, and so it's really, really nice to have you here and to hear what you're doing. So thank you, all three of you, very much.
Just a big thank you not only to Madeline, who's doing an outstanding job, but also a big thank you to Jamie. I mean, without his support and his research and his connections that he's made, we wouldn't be where we are today. So thank you, Jamie, for your leadership, and of course, thanks, Madeline, for all your hard work. You're one of the good ones, so thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Madeline, I'll just follow up or conclude, if you will. I echo everything all these individuals said. Great job. We appreciate it. I want to touch on something though that Mr. Bellingham said, and I'm sure the newspaper reporter will be watching this at some point if they're not watching it live. But really a big thank you to the community of Faribault, because I don't believe any of these classes would be available if we didn't have the 7-period day. And at the end of the day, we wouldn't have the 7-period day if we didn't pass a levy funding the 7-period day. And so it's just really great to see and hear the number of students getting to do this stuff. And you're right, the jobs out there are really endless in this area, as Mr. Robichaud said. So thank you to you, thank you to the community, and we appreciate it. In following Ms. Cavalier's comments, it's really fun to hear these kinds of presentations, because there's oftentimes where we I don't know if you'll call it argue, or we banter back and forth on this and that, but this is stuff that's really moving the needle for our students, and it's wonderful, so thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. This brings us to item 9D, which is the Minnesota School Boards Association Certificate of Training for Ms. Courtney Cavalier.
Well,
So,
thank you.
Ms. Cavalier, will you come on over? And let me see here, this at MSBA. We appreciate the efforts and dedication all Minnesota school board members put forth for the sake of public school children, and we encourage you to urge their continued participation. So with that, look at this.
Yeah,
This is the big
good,
time.
yeah.
We present you with that
Thank
and your
you.
leadership development certificate, so thank you. Yeah, we're smiling.
Thank you, that's awesome.
All right. That brings us to 9E, COVID update, Superintendent Sesker.
Yeah, we actually have our next COVID meeting on Wednesday, so I'm just going to give you a couple brief items about what's happening. And as you know, there's a new virus out there they're tracking. They're trying to figure out what that one is going to be is the Omicron virus. We really don't have much information about that right now. We don't know about its transmissibility or how the vaccines can really protect that one. The other one I just want to point out is the vaccine rates in Rice County right now. The people with at least one vaccine dose, we're at about 61.6%. And people with a completed vaccine series, we're at 57.4%. This is as of 2 weeks ago. And then the last one, I have just our case rate per 100,000. Remember, we want to try to get our case rate at 50 or below. Then that means we can relieve the mask. If we're below 50 for more than a week, then we get rid of the mask mandate. It would be the recommendation for that. Right now, we're still pretty high. We're still at 444. Compared to other counties, though, it's actually lower. So we just keep on moving, try to move in a positive direction the best that we can. I did ask about the fully vaccinated folks of 12 years of age or older. Those other percentages were everybody. So that's a little bit better. People who have been vaccinated that are 12 years of age or older is about 68%. So making some progress. I really don't have a lot more to report yet. Our ICC team meets on Wednesday, and I'll get a little bit more information next week. So, and again, I'm just going to say publicly thank you to Sarah Coulter and Lindsay Reese. They're our public health experts. And actually, all the clinics in town have really been a nice resource for us to guide us through this pandemic. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Board members, questions or comments for Superintendent Sesker? Mr. Olson.
I talked to Mr. Sesker about shot clinics in our schools. Like I mentioned before, I grew up with, way back in the childhood diseases, they would come there, I don't remember going out in the hall, they would give you a shot, for the childhood diseases, but of course voluntary and permission slips, but I'm just wondering, to me, I've mentioned before, it's a good idea, and it's even with a flu shot.
It is. It's a good idea, and thank you for bringing that up, because we have talked about that. What we've seen that has happened in the last 20 months is that fewer parents have brought their children to the hospitals to get vaccinated. So we're exploring different opportunities to not only do the COVID-19 vaccines, but also other vaccines that parents may have missed as a result of this. So we haven't gotten any solid dates yet, but the county is fully aware of that piece. So thanks for bringing that up.
Superintendent Sesker, on that point though, I know the week of Thanksgiving, there was in the cafeteria over here at the middle school, Rice County Public Health had a booster or a vaccination for COVID after hours, after the school day, but it was open to the public, correct?
That's correct. And Sarah just texted me too, and she did say we've had, although our case rates are a little high, actually sit at 513 now per 100K, so it's going in the wrong direction. She did say that we are seeing a really good response from our ages 5+ for vaccines, so that's a positive note.
Thank you. Thank you. Other board members? Questions, comments?
I do track the weekly update on Friday that's on the website. That's very much appreciated. And I am pleased. I believe masking is helping to control the spread within our schools. So the schools are doing a really good job.
Other comments or questions? Superintendent Sesker, I do have a question for you. Can you tell me, and if you can't answer it, maybe somebody in the audience can, what is our direction or policy, process, whatever you want to call it, if, I'll just pick a grade, second grade, I have no reason for picking second grade, but if a second grader were to test positive, and that class has 20 students in there, would those other 19 students' parents, would they be alerted, if a second grader tested positive, would those other 19 students in that class be alerted by either the the teacher or the principal or the school nurse that there was somebody in that class that tested positive? Or do we communicate nothing? Because I've heard conflicting things and
No.
I'm curious.
Yeah, it's kind of on your honor with the way we have the protocols. One of the, call it advantages, disadvantages of having the mask is that as long as you're masking within our school and you're protecting yourself, then we don't have to contact trace. So we're not necessarily contact tracing for students that are around that positive case. And we're also not necessarily contacting, unless I'm wrong, I don't know if you can correct me, Rob, I don't think we're contacting anybody in the school or messaging that out to anybody outside of the school if there is a positive case. Yep, is that correct?
So, follow-up, I understand the contact tracing to a degree in that, one, there's a lot of people that just won't talk to you about it anymore. And number two, it's certainly very tasking in resources, right, or on a resource. My question is really around the alerting of the other 19 families, the parents, and just simply of so-and-so, not so-and-so, there was a student, right, and we would never share their name, but there was a student that tested positive in the class. We'd encourage you to be on the alert for any potential symptoms. Is that a tasking resource, or why do we not do that? And I just, more so abundance, I'm not trying to cause any issues, but more abundance. I've got 2 kids still in the system. I would love if I was alerted that somebody tested positive in their class, just simply to, hey, if they run a temp one night, I'm gonna be on the lookout for it. If they're, showing any symptoms, I'm a lot more likely to go get them tested quicker than not, right? And so anyway, any thoughts on that, or is that an ICC team call, or what is that like?
Yeah, I have that. We can address that at the ICC team meeting, but the theory is, again, if you're masked, then theoretically, and you've been vaccinated, those people who have done that have a really less likelihood of getting COVID-19. So if you measure the resources versus that output, right now, we don't see any reason why we need to send that information out to families. However, with that said, we have our meeting on Wednesday, and that protocol could change. If they feel that it would make a difference for families and they're hearing more about that, then we can certainly try to figure out a way to do that. It does tax resources a little bit. The question would be, who's going to do that? We don't have enough nurses with as busy as they are to do that. Our administrators, we're hiring administrators to try to help cover some of those things. It would probably have to be the classroom teachers that do that, and I'm not sure if they're real excited about doing that as a resource. So, but we will talk about it to see where folks are with that whole piece. And Haley's not here, and so I got to apologize. She actually went on vacation, so that was pretty awesome for her to do that. But I'll give you a better answer once I have a conversation with her too.
Like I said, I'm not trying to cause any waves or anything like that. I just, in terms of, if it's something simple and we can communicate that to our parents, at the end of the day, I realize our kids are wearing masks during the day, but when they go out and they play with their buddies or something, they likely don't have masks on, right? And so, I just ask if that's possible or not. Mr. Olson, you had a question?
Again, that's why I stress shot clinics.
Yep.
So that everybody is vaccinated or whatever. I mean, we can get rid of these masks. We can just let this thing fade off. But again, I think probably going to turn out that each year we'll get a flu and a, COVID, whatever active, like the flu shot is, 3 or 4 different varieties? Who knows? I bet they're working on it.
It changes every year, yep.
Yeah, it changes, so they, that's what I'm stressing, is that, like you mentioned, a case, well, come on in, we have a shot clinic. Could be nurses. When I got my booster, I think was a medic from the National Guard or something. I hope so.
With a needle this long.
About long. Yeah, so.
Yep, we're working on it.
I think there's a lot of people out there that want to help us.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, to your point, I'm fairly certain you would not have the answer to this right now, Mr. Sesker, but I would like to know, for instance, when we do have a case of that's been identified in our schools, are there subsequent cases in that classroom in the following weeks? Or are these throughout the building? I think that would tell us whether it's, how necessary it is for us to be using some pretty significant levels of resources to inform families.
Yeah, no, I think those are both of you guys have great points. I just need Haley here to help me out with some of that expertise, so, yeah.
Can I just clarify something? According to MDE, I just want to clarify your language, Mr. Sesker. According to MDE, because students are masked in schools, they do not need to be named close contacts, nor do they need to quarantine.
Correct.
So that's not our decision. Well, that is partially our decision about why we chose to have masks, so we could avoid some of the quarantine. However, I don't know if MDA has any guidelines they've issued on communication about any positive cases. Do you?
There's no strong recommendation if there's nothing that is in that. It'd just be up to the individual district to go ahead and do that for the masking district. It's different if they're not masked.
So the notification would be for peace of mind of families, not for any change in quarantine or naming close contacts. The kids would still be able to keep going to school unless they became asymptomatic.
That's correct.
Okay, just want to make sure I clarify that. That notification wouldn't change the kids still going to school.
Well, it's up to the parents. I mean,
Right,
parents would make that
Oh,
decision.
yeah, right. I agree, though, with Ms. Treadway, if we knew that there was a cluster, would that be announced
Again,
in a classroom?
I know I'm supposed to know everything, but I have to admit, I don't know all those details. And having Haley here and having our ICC team meet on Wednesday, I'll be able to get those answers more carefully. We'll bring them to the team, and I know you guys support what the team's decision is going to be, and then we'll see where we go from there. It is a matter of resources, so we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly if we're going to do it that route, and we have the personnel to do it.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? Unfortunately, I can tell you it's very real. I have two gentlemen my age, what would appear to be perfectly healthy. One is sitting in intensive care in Rochester, and one got released out of a hospital in a neighboring town about an hour and 20 minutes away because there were not enough beds in Faribault. So this was all in the last 4 to 5 days, and it's very real. So thank you. We appreciate the update and appreciate all the questions. All right, this brings us to item 10, the consent agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Steves. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Brings us to item 11, retirements, and we do not have any today. So the next item is number 12, finance. 12A is the minutes from our November 15th meeting, which is on there. 12B is our budget. Mr. Gertis or Mr. Sesker, would you like to speak at all to the 12B1 enrollment report and 12B2 the financial reports?
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out the enrollment. We're at 89 now. Last time we were at 148, and before that was 90-some. So we're still trying to figure out where the enrollment is exactly, and there are a few variables that are out there making it a little more challenging, particularly with our online learning piece. So we're getting closer. I would say it's on the correct side still, and let's just keep track of it, and then hopefully everything will be fleshed out by January, February, and you'll have a better idea of where we are with our enrollment numbers. But it's starting to get a little bit more accurate as we move through the school year.
A question would be,
Yes, Ms. Rose.
what happened to October 1st count? I thought that was critical.
Yep, that's where we start the process, so all the data is entered in there. And then my next thing, every year what I do is I ask the finance director, and usually it's the director of curriculum, to go around and actually count the number of actual physical kids in the chairs. It's hard to do that with the online piece. But what happens is that we try to coordinate, it makes sense to have the physical bodies coordinate with what the MARS system says, and we always have a big gap. It just happens to be a little bit larger this year than it's been in the past. So that's just how the process works. It's as accurate as the rollover, the entries, and there's a few other variables in there that help.
What is the
Make a
figure that's
challenge.
reported to the state? Like, what's your student count for student aid? I mean, what is that October? I was under impression October 1st.
It changes. So the state does it almost by a daily basis. So they look at it and they'll reevaluate it every single month when they look at that MAR system. So they'll predict, each year they, and you know this better than anybody, each year they hold back 10% of our funding. And so throughout the entire year, we get funding based on an estimate. So we enter the numbers in, we get an estimate, we put money in, and then at the very end of the year, after our audit comes out July 1st, from July 1st through December of that year, we start seeing a little bit more of that 10% coming in, or we don't quite see it all based on the estimates that we have given to the state for that dollar amount. So that's kind of that 60-40 thing that we did a few years ago that
I was
nobody
just
liked,
going
but
to
this
say
is,
that.
we don't want to do that.
If they want to balance their books, they borrow from us, all of a sudden, it's not 10%, 20,
30, 40.
and 40%.
Exactly. But that's how they do it. It's just an estimate, and then at the very end, when they do the audit gets the exact numbers, then we send that to the state, and then we either, and every year we've actually received a little bit more because we're pretty conservative on the estimates.
Mr. Gridges?
I have nothing really more on the monthly counts. I think Todd did a really good job. If you want to just quickly look, I can briefly talk to a few things on the November 21 comparative year-over-year numbers. Since just a couple weeks ago we looked at the October numbers, our November numbers in big picture aren't ready to go yet since this went to production on December 1st. But the things that we look at really closely in terms of utilities, if you look at that on the top of the page, and you look at line over line, pretty static from where they were last year. So it's a pretty even keel for utilities. And as I said this morning, it's a good thing we don't have any numbers in the snow removal column yet. And then if you look down, the other one that we watch very closely is our insurance, self-insurance fund. And if you look at that year to date, we have just over $1 million in revenue and about $990,000 in expenses. So that sits at the end of November, a point in time, sits about $25,000 to the positive. Again, as I said last month, we don't recognize revenue evenly over the 12 months, so that number will fluctuate up and down from a revenue standpoint, and obviously from an expense standpoint as well. If you look at again, talk a little bit about the investments, I think is on there as well. Noted that as of December 1st, we hadn't received all of our investment statements yet. Those are denoted with an asterisk on the file. Again, a solid $130 in change in interest in the month of November. So about the same as it was last month, right?
And Mr. Gridges, just following up on that, this meeting is early in the month, right? Typically, we have our regular business meeting on that third Monday. We're awfully early in the month of December, so typically he would have the statements in a little later. And anyway, I just want to follow up. Just people should make note of the calendar change of when we have our meetings here in December. So.
That is correct. Thank you.
Anything else you'd like to report on?
That's all I have for the financials.
Board members, any questions or comments from Mr. Gridges? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We appreciate it. This brings us, I believe, to 12B3, gifts and donations. This is resolution 21-27. Let me get this a little bit bigger so I can read this. Donations in the past month. Donations for the Nest at the Faribault High School. Ann Weber, 3 bags of clothing. Sean Barons, $100 through the Give MN page. Valerie Pomerantz, $50 through the Give MN page. Chris Drevlo, $100 through the Give MN page. Molly Tichnall, 5 scarves and a winter hat. And Kathy Zavrall, 3 boxes of clothing and 5 pairs of shoes. So once again, we thank everybody for their donations and continued support of our Faribault Public Schools. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the gifts and donations, Resolution 21-27.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Treadway, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
Aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves.
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
Thank you for that. The next items below 12C here are items reviewed by the Finance Committee this morning and suggested for board approval. So item 12C1, consider approval of furniture and equipment bid for Jefferson and Roosevelt Elementary Schools. Superintendent Sesker, you want to touch on this first?
Yeah, so these are dollars that have been budgeted. They're just bids that you need to approve now. They're the lowest bids that were received, and so we are recommending approval.
All right, I will entertain a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, I'll so move.
I can second.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion? Mr.
Where's
Olson?
this money coming from again?
Scott, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I certainly can.
Thanks.
So, part of this bid, all this bid was for the furniture. Part of it for Roosevelt Elementary is coming out of the COP construction fund that we issued last year. And the money for Jefferson Elementary School is money that the board approved to come out of the ESSER $3, as well as a little bit of the community ed funding that's paying for a little bit of it as well.
Thank you. Other comments or questions, items of discussion here? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Cavalier. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed, opposed? Didn't hear you. Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Item 12C2, consider approval of capital items for school sites. Superintendent Sesker.
Yeah, real briefly, you know what, you're going to have to talk about the braiding again because you do a much better job than I do, Scott, so I'm not even going to give it an effort, so go ahead.
Sounds good. So last year, as we wrapped up the books in September, we were able to shift or braid some expenditures out of the capital restricted bucket of money, so not general fund unrestricted, but capital restricted dollars, to other funding streams to allow for some capital purchases that are needed throughout the district here in fiscal year 22. That dollar amount is listed in the memo of $94,248. A couple of the projects that are listed below, you can see that is some mobile computer lab at the ALC, some badly needed risers over at the middle school. We talked about furniture at both Roosevelt and Jefferson. There's some other sites that are in badly need of some furniture, and then a few other minor things throughout the district. As you're well aware, $94,000 will go awful quick.
And that comes out of operating capital now, correct?
That is correct. So again, that is the restricted bucket of money, 424.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve the capital items for school sites.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Treadway. Any further discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Brings us to item number 12C3, consider approval of the 2021 Pay 2022 levy certification. Superintendent Sesker.
Yep, we are, you saw the presentation that Scott gave earlier, and so we are recommending that we certify the following dollar amount in the 2022 levy certification, if my glasses don't steam up. It is in the amount of $10,689,911.49.
Okay, I believe this is going to be a roll call. I don't believe it's a resolution. So I will entertain a motion to approve the 2021 pay 2022 levy certification.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion by Ms. Steves, a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion on this item, Mr. Olson?
Can this go lower or not? What would that do if we,
It would take funding away from the school district, so it'd be less dollars coming into the school district. It's the same dollar amount. It's, just real briefly, it's the same dollar amount that the school receives. It's just that the local taxpayers have to take more of the burden on because the wealth of our community has increased. All the schools go through the same process. So you guys didn't really, you really didn't do anything to make the taxes go up. It was part of the state formula.
Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we have a motion by Ms. Steves, a second by Ms. Cavalier. Ms. Treadway, will you please do a roll call?
John Bellingham.
Aye.
Courtney Cavalier.
Aye.
Richard Olson.
aye.
Jerry Robichaud.
Aye.
Cassie Steves.
Aye.
Carolyn Treadway, aye. Chad Wolf.
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right, thank you. Brings us to item 13, the policy committee. 13A is the minutes, but we do not have a report. Brings us to 13B, consider approval of the following policies. This is our second reading of these, and like we've done historically, I will mention these and we'll do them all in one action if possible, unless somebody's opposed to that. So item 13B1, policy 102, equal education opportunity. Policy 406, public and private personnel data. Policy 501, school weapons policy. And policy 714, fund balances. I will entertain a motion to approve all of them.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud, a second by Ms. Treadway. Any further discussion?
Just another big thank you to the policy committee. You guys are working hard and doing a great job.
All right.
Mr. Chair, if I may, so Mr. Sesker, correct me, and Kathy as well, so, but most of the changes within these are for statute.
That's correct. Yep.
And that's, when we went through, these are statute changes, so yes.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. Brings us to item 14, other matters. 14A, consider approval of comparable worth pay increase. Superintendent Sesker.
Yes, and so this one was the addendum. Is that a hand? There it is. Right?
Yep,
Okay.
correct, yep.
Just want to make sure we had it. So that is,
And the memo is in board book.
maybe you can read the memo, Chad. I'm going to have
Do you
to
want me to read
reset. Yeah. I don't know if I have it here.
Please consider a comparable worth pay adjustment commencing on January 1st, 2022 in the amount of $56.86 per day for the position of Director of Buildings and Grounds and Health and Safety. Current is $401.32 per day, proposed is $458.18 per day. This director position has grown over the past several years by adding additional square footage district-wide, implementing numerous new and innovative safety measures for staff, students and visitors, taking a proactive approach to maintaining our facilities, and also increasing responsibilities within our LTFM, long-term funding. We recommend adjusting our salary amounts so that we can be competitive with the regional competition and also offer a fair and competitive wage for the responsibilities expected of this position. Our Director of Buildings and Grounds and Health and Safety is a key piece in creating a safe, welcoming, and educationally sound environment for the Faribault Public Schools students, staff, and community members. We appreciate the terrific work that has been done and look forward to continuing on a positive trajectory with our facilities, grounds, and health and safety initiatives. Thank you for your consideration. Ms. Nicole Yokel.
Yeah, and I actually forgot that Nicole is online. If you have questions for Nicole, she can respond to you, so she is here. And we are, it is a proposal that we believe makes us more competitive job-wise. We want to keep our current director of Buildings and Grounds. He's done an outstanding job, and we think that this will keep him here.
Wonderful, thank you. I will entertain a motion to approve 14A, comparable worth pay increase.
Mr. Chair, also move.
We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham,
A second.
a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes 6-1. Thank you. This brings us to 14B, consider approval of additional employment. Why don't I take this one? How's that, Superintendent Sesker?
Go ahead.
This is just something that typically probably would be in the consent agenda with additional employment. But if you take a look at the attachment, it is the consider of approval for the hiring of Ms. Treadway as an on-call substitute teacher district-wide at $145 per day or $29 per hour, and that certainly varies based on her deciding when to substitute teach. And it also is considering the approval of the hiring of myself as a volunteer 8th grade boys basketball coach here at the Faribault Middle School, effective on January 3rd through February 25th of 2022. Both of us will certainly abstain, but we wanted to just make sure that this was out there in a transparent manner, and this way we didn't have to pull it from the consent agenda. So with that...
Mr. Chair, I think you can vote on,
Again.
I think because you're not being paid.
Well, I'll abstain in this,
Oh, okay.
but thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, I will.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the additional employment?
Can we take these separately and see what kind of a vote we get?
Sure can.
Just kidding. So moved.
That was funny. Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Robichaud and a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, again, I would like to thank both you and Ms. Treadway for your dedication and your efforts of going back in and subbing and coaching, et cetera, being back in with kids. It shows a real commitment as community and board members, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And both Ms. Treadway and I will abstain. So that passes 5-0. Thank you. Item 14C, consider approval of the annual audit report from 2021. Superintendent Sesker?
Yeah, and we apologize. We were supposed to put that on the last board agenda. You saw the audit presentation. We just forgot to get an approval for that, so.
Okay.
Yeah, typically, we approve it when we have the report, and several of us had to go back and watch minutes and look to make sure, did we really not approve that? So this is something we have to do. So with that said, I'll entertain the approval of the annual audit report 2021.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Olson, a second by Ms. Cavalier. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you. That brings us to item 14D, World's Best Workforce Achievement and Integration Report. Ms. Corcoran.
You get the big.
Yep.
No.
Oh, and Ms. Onis. Thank you to both of you.
All right. Hi, everyone. We're excited to share our 21-22 World's Best Workforce and Achievement Integration Plan. And so always starting with why we're here, or ending maybe, we're at the end, towards the end of the meeting, but really remembering about our students, right? And our mission to ensure equitable education that is nourishing our students, inspiring, challenging, and ultimately empowering them to be successful as learners and citizens. And so one of the ways that we do this is through World's Best Workforce, which is legislation that was passed in 2013. And so we're gonna break apart all 5 of these goals. But before we jump into the goals, we do wanna honor the reality of the world we've been living in as educators. And so when we put together the World's Best Workforce Plan this year, it was really important for us to continue to look at data. However, to look at it through the lens of the reality that we've all been living as to education. So we are going to look at data and want to make sure that it is done through the lens of the system, looking at our entire district, looking at opportunities to celebrate and looking at opportunities for growth. And thinking about it through that system lens and not personalizing that data around our students and or our teachers who have been working very hard in very challenging conditions. So with that, let's start with our youngest learners. So our initial goal is around all students being ready for kindergarten. And so we use our fall kindergarten measure for this goal. And you're gonna see that we are moving in a positive trajectory, and that's really a celebration to our early childhood programming at McKinley, as well as the partnerships that we are continuing to develop throughout the community to make sure that we have access for students to have that early childhood experience, as well as really aligning programming to make sure that it is guaranteeing kindergarten readiness. That includes social emotional learning, so wanting to make sure that students start to develop those executive functioning skills, are learning how to work with each other, learning to follow routines and expectations. And we're so excited about the addition of Mary Mischke, our family outreach coordinator this year, who is doing phenomenal work around family and community engagement, really elevating the need for screening, ensuring that we have information out to our community about how to enroll in Faribault Public Schools for kindergarten. And then we also have the CLSD Literacy Grant. That acronym is the Comprehensive Literacy State Development Grant. We just go with CLSD. But that grant has given us a full-time literacy coach in our early childhood programming, as well as a family literacy specialist at that level. So a lot of partnership work to elevate the need for literacy at that youngest level. The next goal is focusing on third grade students being able to read at grade level. And so this is one where we do take the MCA 3, our statewide reading assessment, and you're going to see that our initial data is 18.2% of our third graders proficient in third grade, and we want to increase that. And now I do want to lift up the fact that the 2021 spring was a pandemic year, and so we do see that dip. However, the dip isn't as significant as we maybe would have anticipated in regards to that pandemic year. So as we lift up this goal, really thinking about recalibrating our language and literacy framework in our kindergarten through 5th grade classrooms. And what that means is how are we guaranteeing that each and every student has access to reading and writing, speaking and listening skills throughout their day. We also have the literacy coach and family literacy specialists at all 3 of our elementary schools, as well as work that we've done as a teaching and learning team and elementary buildings to really develop our multi-tiered system of support. So we're not leaving students behind if they are in need of that additional support. Our third World's Best Workforce goal is closing the racial and economic achievement gaps. And so this, in addition to reading, also looks at math, and we look at it through the lens of economic data and racial student groups. And our goal is just growth. We just want to continue to decrease that achievement gap, and our goal is 3 percentage points each year. And I warn you, there's a lot of data on the next 2 slides. And this is a public document that is on our website under our continuous improvement plans. So any board members, any community members, any school employees have access to this information on the website. So when we look at the different student groups, as I mentioned, we look at it from an economic as well as a racial student groups. And so you can see we have that 2019-20 gap. That was our spring pandemic year. But when you look at the Hispanic or Latinx and our Black African American student groups, they are not yet at the same proficiency level that our white students are performing at. And so we look at that, and again, it's out of the lens of curiosity and ways that our systems might be able to respond to our students of color and ensure that they also are achieving at high levels. Looking at it through the lens of EL students and our students experiencing poverty, those are also numbers that are not yet meeting where our white students are performing. And so looking at that from reading as well as in math, and you're going to see a similar trend with our math data. So what are we doing to move the needle and close that achievement gap? AVID is one of our K-12 systems that is really focusing on closing the achievement gap, having high expectations for all students, ensuring that we have rigorous instruction happening in all of our classes, and also creating some common language for students to be successful in our courses. AVID creates that college and career readiness culture and sees all of our students as scholars, and it is by far probably the messaging across the district is so positive around AVID. So when you talk to any teacher, you talk to any students, you talk to families, it just really has made a significant difference for our students and our community. We also have our FACES, which is our Family and Community Engagement Specialist. This is a redefined role that was our cultural liaisons, and we elevated that knowing the need to really bridge that community and family connection within our schools. And so they are really leading the way in how are we going to partner with our families within our community, and most specifically our students of color and students experiencing poverty. RISE is another one of our great programs in place, really working intentionally to help all students realize their individual potential, and another way in which we are working strategically to close the economic and, or to close the achievement gap, I should say. Goal number 4 is we have all students ready for college and career. And this, it was so great to hear Maddie talk about agriculture, because this is really the goal where our pathways live. And so when we think about career pathways and rigorous coursework, we just want to see that participation increase for our students. And so we are really just at the baseline data in the 21-22 school year. So we want to look at AP and concurrent enrollment, and then we're ultimately going to be tracking the numbers of students participating in our career pathways. And right now it's just involvement. One of the things as we continue to develop the pathways is to be able to see which students are kind of exploring multiple pathways, which students are concentrators, and which students are completers. And what I mean by that is, do we have freshmen who are able to work through the ag pathway from freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, senior year? Or do we have students who are doing health sciences and agriculture and business and kind of getting some diverse experiences in that way? And then another measure that we look at is our ACT data, and that is moving in a positive trend, and so that is a celebration for us as we look at our college readiness data. So additional pieces, I talked about the career pathways, we've talked about AVID, and another piece that we're looking at is just increasing opportunities to rigorous courses. So are we removing barriers to students being able to take AP classes and or persist in AP classes or concurrent classes? So we know it's one thing to register, we know it's one thing to persist, and we know it's another thing to pass the AP test, to get that college credit, and so really digging into that a little deeper. Last but not least, making sure all of our students graduate from high school. And so looking at this, we are also seeing a positive growth in our graduation rates, and really wanting to also see this in our growth for all racial and economic groups. So you can see the positive trend for all students, moving from 66.8 in the 19 school year to 76.4% in our spring of 20. And again, looking at this in various student groups, we are making a positive impact on all student groups as we think about all students graduating from high school. And so that is a testament not only to the work that Mr. Benty and his team are doing at the high school, but also, again, the changes within our system that really elevate high expectations and that goal of high school graduation for all students.
Ms. Corcoran, do we not have any 2021 data yet?
We do not yet. Thanks for asking that. And so thinking about all of those goals, one of the things that MDE did in the last 2 years is to combine the achievement and integration plan that we have as a district within the World Best Workforce frame. And so I invited Heidi to share more about what we're doing with A&I.
All right, so our A&I plan, we are currently in year 2 of this next 3-year cycle. And so this is some data from going through our first year last year. And again, Tracy had mentioned, we have had kind of a year and a half of disruption. However, our students and our staff have still persisted in some areas too to grow in some areas. So in this last round of A&I, the state wanted us to really dig into our goals and be very, very specific. Instead of just increasing our overall graduation rates, you can see our first goal is FPS 4-year graduation rate for Black students will increase from 42.9% in 2019 to 48% by 2023. That was our goal. So while they want us to get specific into a student population, achievement and integration funding is meant to help all students. So it's not just geared towards a certain group of students, but really overall help our students, with our focus being on how to increase or decrease the opportunity gap, but also increase opportunities for students. And so in 2020, we achieved 59.1%. So we saw an increase in our Black student graduation rates. Goal number 2 is the number of FPS Black secondary students participating in leadership opportunities will increase from 11% to 30% in 2023. We did see an increase last year, even through all the disruptions we had in the school year. Maybe not the growth that we would love to see to reach that 30%, but still growth. And I commend our staff and students too for still staying involved and taking opportunities that were given to them, especially when we were in the buildings, and they were giving back to the community, they were giving back to younger students and themselves too. And then our goal 3 by 2023, and this was prescriptive by MDE, for a goal like this, increase the number of FPS teachers of color from 1.47% in 2019 to 3% in 2023. And if you've seen the data coming out of colleges, it's barely 3% that are in college right now going into the profession. So we want to change that too. We saw a slight increase in that this past year, moving up to 2.2%. So we're on an upward trend, and hopefully that will continue to move forward. And so action steps through integration. And so within those goals, we have to have specifically strategies to meet those goals. So you can see them up here. Family, school, and community partnerships, AVID, our 9th grade academy and 9th grade seminar, partial funding for FTEs in those, and things like supplies and transportation for field trips. Our new faces positions, moving away from our liaison positions in the past. CAST, College Ambitions Start Today, which is an after-school program at the high school with many students involved. And that's also evolved into a 3-week summer program that's been fabulous. Our Falcons for Change and Web at the middle school. And then with Community Ed and Anne Marie, Grow Your Own. And with the Grow Your Own, really starting to focus on uplifting the education field too, as the pathways are being built, but starting with our younger learners too, to show them the pathway of going into education and working with especially MSU Mankato, but all the universities out there too. So much so, some good news, one of our former AVID students is currently teaching at Lakeville North High School. He was one of our first graduates from the AVID program, and he's teaching social studies and AVID. So, here yet. Still, though, to see our students, Faribault students, going into the field of education and staying within the region, going into teaching, which is pretty exciting.
Great.
Wonderful, thank you.
You know, that was fast and furious, so
Oh, yeah.
welcome.
Board members, questions, comments?
I do have a question about A&I. It used to be that you had to partner with another district. Do you still do that?
Yes, we are partners, that's expanded. And so it used to be just with Waterville, WEM. And then now we have Northfield and Tri-City United as well. Now with last year during the pandemic, we weren't able to get together and do what we normally would do in that. So plan is this year, moving forward, our fifth graders collaborate on 2 different events with WEM. And then with the others, it started with a student leadership forum summit that we held 2 years ago. That was amazing. And our hope is to continue doing that and expanding that as we go. So we're hoping this spring to revitalize that if everything gets better and we can collaborate in person. And that was student leaders from all 4 districts really looking at the gap data and having really good discussions about that. So we want to continue that with them too.
To give some agency to the students who will benefit themselves.
Right, exactly.
Perfect.
I have a question. Thank you both. This is the second time I've heard this presentation because we did it in district advisory last week. I appreciate the position that we want to have the test scores for our data point. And I can understand that it's important for us to do that. It doesn't change the fact that it's hard to see them. So I want to make sure I say out loud, again, what you said at the beginning, that the tests were not at all modified for the changes in instruction or the impact of the pandemic on children for the past 18 months or 2 years. I think we have a lot to be proud of. That our teachers and our staff were able to pivot on such short notice and persevere through this difficult time. Having said all that, I'm wondering if you have any theories or if there are patterns across the state that show why the gap is bigger in math than it is in reading. I thought that was pretty interesting. It is significantly bigger in math.
So right now, I think it's speculation because I think there's a lot more data. Just leads us to so many more questions, right? One of the things that we're excited about is the Math Standards Committee refining. So if you remember, the MDE made a decision not to redo the math standards. So we are currently operating under standards, I believe they're from 2007. Now with that said, often any of those standards revisions is just an opportunity to kind of fresh and rethink. And the reason MDE made that choice is because it was in the Common Core math era. And so they made a choice to stick with where we were at. And so that has now translated into a lot more skill-based because that's how our standards are written. Where the MCA, we're in MCA 3, and it still has a lot more of that real-world complex thinking. And so the standards and the test aren't necessarily measuring the same thing.
We could really have had a double whammy on those 2021 test scores.
Yep.
Oh, that's really interesting. Thanks for, I'm sure you've explained that to me before, but I appreciate that again.
But we are very excited. MD just convened, created their math committee list. So we're excited that there is some change happening there.
Other questions or comments? I have 2 for you. About 2 or 3 pages from the end, during the A&I piece, there were some goals. Yes, that one right there. Do we have any specific goals for our Latinx population?
So that was interesting. When we were writing our goals, our first draft included our Black and brown students. MDE wanted it to be more specific. However, still want to keep track of that too, because it is, I mean, the gap is there. So while this is A&I's, internally, we're also keeping track of that too, so that gap closes and those opportunities are for all our students.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, I believe last year with the distance learning and kind of the optionality of everything, it was extremely easy for distance learners to opt out. In fact, my son, who was in 7th grade last year, didn't take any of the tests. How are those students measured? Are they actually measured in a penalizing way, or are they just simply not counted in there? How does that work?
Yeah, so when we look at how they calculated the data, they are part of, the opting out is part of the not proficient. So it's a variable for us to consider.
Yeah.
And yet, when you look overall too, we actually had 90% participation, even in the pandemic. Typically, we see 90 to 93%, I need to say that differently. And then we just saw a slight dip of 3, so it was 87% that participated of our overall N.
But so the 10% of students that don't participate are automatically marked as not proficient.
Yep.
Oh, my God.
I wish that would say that somewhere
We could
in
add a
big
little
bold.
disclaimer.
But I mean, that's real. I mean, it's,
It is,
you know,
yep.
now, would their percentages carry throughout those 10%? Maybe, maybe not, but it's an interesting thing that it's penalizing by not doing it. And then I'm sorry, I had 3 questions. Just my last simple question is, will the report you just showed, will that be uploaded into board book?
We can put it on board book, yes.
Okay, just since
Yep.
we shared it tonight, I think it should be in there if it would, and it's obviously taped and whatnot, so that'd be great, thank you. That's it, that's all I have. Other questions or comments?
I am interested in the 2 of your perspectives. As we know, Faribault has a very high poverty rate among our students, and at least it used to be researched that the greatest risk for school failure is indeed poverty. Do you see any correlation to, even though we're having growth, are there reasons that our school district may not be achieving at the level that all of us would hope they are?
So when I look at this data, again, I think there's a lot of variables in that question. And I think, you know, Maslow before Bloom, you'll hear that in the world of education right now. And so when I think about students experiencing poverty, how do we ensure that they have their basic needs met on any given day, in addition to learning at high levels? And so we know that having kids in school is a huge variable. And so how do we make sure that we are working with families and community to make sure that our students are here every day for learning? I think we do amazing work around food services, when we, you know, talked about the donations to the nest. So a lot of ways that as a system, we are trying to respond to those Maslow pieces. I also want to lift up the work that our teachers do every day, because our teachers have the greatest impact on students. And so having that bell to bell and really having those high expectations and engaging experiences for kids, I think is one of the biggest things we can do to be able to disrupt that cycle.
And then, like, during the school day too, with some of our between the 9th grade academy and AVID and all their different programs during the day, Falcons for Change, some of our after-school programming, we provide the transportation, we provide, you know, we make sure they have food and snacks, some of those basic needs that we don't necessarily think about all the time, but for a lot of our kids, it makes a huge difference. And then just providing those opportunities for them to go to McKinley, the middle school Falcons for Change.
The effort through AVID has been remarkable. Thank you.
So many college credit courses right now. A student can go through high school and get their AA degree and their high school diploma right when they graduate. Actually, they can go even above some of those credits too. So we're offering these are places where we're trying to remove barriers for students that are not quite finding that success, but we are at the same time.
Okay, wonderful, thank you so much, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, this brings us to item 15, other items of information. 15A, school board members, excuse me, the floor is yours. Mr. Robichaud.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to preface my request by drawing our attention to the tragedy that happened in Oxford, Michigan. I just can't imagine what that school is going through, all of the stress and all the mental health issues that students and staff and parents have experienced over the last year with the pandemic and other things that have taken place. But I just can't imagine now you compound that with that tragedy that happened. And I would like to say that our thoughts and prayers go out to those families of the victims, and that that community will come together again. At this point, coming back to an environment, trying to get kids caught up to come to school. Consider modifying our calendar. Sometimes come some of those mental issues that we're faced with. I'd like to give you a couple of extra days to read.
Thank you. Superintendent Sesker, I think that kind of is directed more your way than our way. So I don't have any idea what our contract is or what our contact days are or any of that. So
Yeah, so we actually have talked about that, and not just us, but with local districts. And I really appreciate that, because you're right, our staff is experiencing a lot of stress, as well as our kids and everybody else. There are a lot of places too, just to be sure that you guys understand that some of our teachers are really excelling, and the kids are in the classrooms and they're doing great. So it's not everybody that's out there experiencing this bogged down in stress, but there are a significant number of.
Yeah, that was not my point, Mr. Sesker, to say that everybody's experiencing it.
Yeah, I understand that too. And, when we look at these, and we are going to look at it too, in fact, it's on my cabinet agenda for tomorrow to talk a little bit more about this. A couple things to consider, of course, and we can figure out ways to get around contractual things and deals like that. We do have 168 student days. Some schools have 172. Some schools have 174. We're a little bit on the low end on that whole thing. And as you may know, if we get too far below that number, then we hit the number of hours and we start losing funding. So we'll have to keep an eye on that piece of it too. And I do agree with you, as we move forward, we want to make sure that this is strategic to make sure that we don't make things worse than what they already are. So one of the things we actually did discuss is, let's just say, for instance, we decided to have a school day where...
My concern actually is more about staffing shortages. I believe that typically, as day, there was one teaching position that went unfilled and 2 paraprofessionals that went unfilled. Those dramatic...
Other board members?
Maybe even if there's a light snow, we could call snow day.
Yeah, then the parents get mad at me. We would like to boost that up to $200 a day, and we're hoping with Nicole for a short call sub. If you have a teaching license, and you can come in and talk to Nicole and sign up for a long-term sub.
I will just point out, I know we're going to talk in a moment about our January 3rd organizational meeting, or just mention that date, but just please remember, make sure your calendars are checked for, I believe at 3 o'clock that day is when we have our next meeting with HYA regarding our superintendent search.
Resurface Lincoln, Jefferson, and the football field, hockey arena area. Well, the bids came in lower than what was budgeted by quite a bit. In excess, anywhere between, I think it's closer to $600,000.
Yes.
Yep. And what we're looking at right now for, and we will bring some of that information to you, but I wanted you to be aware of it, that we have, it doesn't affect the general fund or operating capital or any of those other funds. It's just the dollar amounts that we have left over from the original parking lot abatement that was approved, okay? They were instrumental in getting the ag credit. That you're part of that organization. A little bit of a decrease on taxes for our farmers, which is terrific. But Dick Berge is retiring for C, and Dick's been on that, actually started that committee, was part of a huge case back in the early 90s called Ski versus the state of Minnesota, He's going to be retiring. He's the finance person that helps run C. And then also Deb Griffith is retiring. They're both retiring at the same time. So we're busy helping, and I'm on the board there, writing up job descriptions and going through that process with C to help replace those two really important people that were on that. And then the last thing, good news, our H2C steering committee met last week. Our H2C committee we're the steering committee, so we're more of the 20,000 foot level. Tracy and Emery and Jamie and company do most of the work around the pathways, but we have a manufacturing, engineering, and carpentry pathway ready to roll out pretty, well, maybe not quite ready. How close?
Will be implemented next school year.
Good job, I like to hear that. So by next fall, we should have that implemented. And a big thanks to the chamber. Of course, the 7-period day and all the voters that helped approve the 7-period day are making this all possible. So another fun activity that I've been part of. And other than that, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Brings us to item 16, dates to remember, our January 3rd, 2022 organizational meeting that will be here, correct, Superintendent Sessions? All right. Before we move to adjourn, this is our last board meeting of 2021. Just want to thank everybody for their time and dedication and efforts, and wish everybody a happy holidays. And with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Well, nobody else wants to go home tonight.
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Treadway. We have a motion by Mr. Bellingham, a second by Ms. Treadway. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 7-0. Thank you.